really want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to protecting affordable housing for New Yorkers who need it most. We know in 2026, certainly 2025, the issue of affordable housing has been top of mind, a big part of the whole affordability agenda that everybody is concerned about. What this report that we're releasing today focuses on is a very important part of the affordable housing equation and has been since 1955, and that's Mitchell-Lama. This report is a summary of audits that have been compiled over the past few years by the State Comptroller's Office, or a division of state government accountability. A lot of work goes into these audits. This report brings together 5 significant audits conducted over 6 years, examining conditions at 26 Mitchell-Lama developments in New York City and really all across New York State. We're here in the city, but Mitchell-Lama is a statewide program. I want to acknowledge, and especially for my colleagues who are standing here, the folks who really do the work. You know, my name may be on the report, but the folks who do the work are a very professional audit team, headed by our Deputy Comptroller for State Government Accountability, Tina Kim. Where's Tina? There she is right there. And our audit team, Kendrick Cefantes, Director over Housing, and Diane Gustard, Manager over Housing. Give them a round of applause, because they are the ones who really have done this work. And really, you know, I should just say, especially to our resident advocates, they have made Mitchell-Lama audits a key priority of their work. You should know that, and certainly elected officials who call upon us on a regular basis to do these audits, you should know they are the ones that do this work. I'm just going to give very summary comments, because we do have a lot of folks that want to offer their words. But let me just say that what we have found is concerning. The problems in the buildings that we have looked at are not isolated. They, as you can see from our boards there, some very serious issues. What it really amounts to is systemic failures that have persisted in many cases, too many cases, for many, many years. When unsafe conditions go unfixed or apartments sit vacant, homes are taken out of the housing supply at a time when New Yorkers need them most. And long-term vacancies impact a building's finances. So there really is an interconnectedness to these issues that we found. And that's why, you know, we do audits all the time, and they may be one-off on a particular building or particular project. We feel these issues are so significant, we wanted to roll up our findings in this audit, put it together in this comprehensive report. So there are really 3 major problems that the report highlights. First, unsafe living conditions. Obviously a big issue for the people and the families living in these units. Weak financial oversight. Those entities and agencies that are charged with the responsibility of oversight clearly need to step up and do a better job. And that challenge of long-term vacancies. Obviously the impact in terms of people not being able to get into an affordable apartment, but when an apartment sits vacant, money is not coming in, and that's going to hurt the overall finances for the development, potentially raising the cost to the people who are living there. So there is an interconnection between all of these issues. They really do create a cycle of deterioration, financial strain, and risks to residents. And that's why this report not only talks about these issues, but really focuses on what needs to change and what needs to change now. First, the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the State Division of Housing and Community Renewal must require building management to fix unsafe conditions quickly and with urgency. Those are the 2 agencies, 1 city, 1 state, that have this oversight role over Mitchell-Lama. Second, these agencies must ensure timely inspections, strengthen financial oversight and accountability, and act faster to return vacant apartments to use. These are really the kind of concrete steps that we're recommending as part of this report. I do have to say, when we've done audits, we do see some progress in response to our findings, and we're pleased by that. But it's very, very clear that more needs to be done and more can be done, and that's really the message that we underscore with this report being released today.
Thank you for this insightful report. This is issues I've been working on for a very, very long time, for decades. As a matter of fact, I was hired as executive director for Tenants and Neighbors to work on this issue. And one of those people who hired me is Ms. Jackie Peters on the board. So this is like a full circle. You said that? So, this type of housing is a lifeline for a lot of New Yorkers in search of the ever decreasing and elusive affordable home. And the Mitchell-Lama program in particular has served as a vital component of New York City's affordable housing stock. When many of us talk about these type of programs, from tenancy to ownership, Mitchell-Lama is the one that we lift up so often as the type of program we need even more of, but we have to make sure it's working even if we want more. And while this program has proved absolutely vital, it is not without some of the same kind of problems that have plagued our housing stock for decades. I've worked on addressing these issues I've mentioned in this area, from transparency against discrimination to safety concerns. And Tenants and Neighbors, we were trying to keep these homes, these buildings in Mitchell-Lama back then. And this report shows how much more there is to do from the work that we've already done. As was mentioned, the audit shows troubling financial oversight, including millions in misspent or unsupported funds. Agencies like New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, we say DHR, I think it's HCR now. I don't want to age myself. And New York City Department of HPD must strengthen monitoring and accountability. One of the biggest ones that stuck out to me is the long vacant apartments that are leaving millions of dollars on the table at the same time while hundreds, if not thousands of families are searching desperately for housing. Every empty unit is a missed opportunity to house a New Yorker who needs stability. The solutions are clear and really outlined in this report: stronger oversight, transparent finances, regular maintenance planning, and responsible management so Mitchell-Lama developments can remain affordable and livable for the generations of New Yorkers who depend on them. And now, I want to make sure we're clear. We have to support our Mitchell-Lamas even more. A lot of folks are just trying to live. This is not the professionals that come in and do this work. They must have government assistance in trying to make sure they're running the buildings in the best way possible. So just throwing money at it without increasing the oversight and assistance may not be the answer. Definitely increasing how much they have to pay, and some of them have increased 50, 60%, is not going to be the answer. So we need to make sure there's additional funding from government and additional assistance so that money can be managed in the most efficient way possible. It makes no sense to have vacant apartments, this type of affordability, if we can't have tenants going into it and if they can't maintain it. What we don't want to do is make an affordable housing program unaffordable in an effort to fix it so people can live with it. We have to maintain its affordability, and we have to make it livable so folks can stay there and live out their days. We have folks who are on fixed income. We have senior citizens who are doing the best they can with an income that is not going to go up, no matter if you increase it. We don't want to put people out. We don't want to put people in shelters. We want this successful program to continue to be successful, and we want it to be replicated. So I'm thankful for my colleagues who are here, for the Mitchell-Lama residents themselves, who scream at us all the time to make sure we don't forget about them, and they should continue doing so. And we can do this in a way that works so that we can replicate it and make sure that everybody has the housing that we need. If we had listened to many of us decades ago, we wouldn't be here, but we're here now. So let's please fix it, and I'm really thankful that the Comptroller is raising this issue once again with an awesome report, getting a bunch of media, so this is awesome. Thank you so much, thank you.
This is the most important program in the city of New York, and so what comes out of Mitchell-Lama's are leaders, and they have for years. And at Clinton Towers, which is the one that is the subject of this wonderful report for Manhattan, the issue has been, coming out of this has been community board leaders, PTA leaders, and the disabled community, because the two twins live there who have been the persons who made the Department of Education focus on people with disabilities. That is what comes out of a Mitchell-Lama. That's the good news. The bad news is that in this particular case, as the controller indicated, mouse droppings at the daycare center, apartments that have not been leased in 120 days. And then the other problem is people don't pay their rent. And that means that management is not focused, but guess who's not focused are the city and state agencies, in this case, the city agencies. So as we speak, there is money that is finally flowing to fix up the lobby, to get the scaffolding, which has homeless under it and garbage under it, removed so that we can enjoy the building as it is. Con Ed The bill is finally current, but there are millions of dollars literally owed from back rent, and I've made sure that the residents don't pay that increase. That should be figured out by management with oversight from HPD. At the same time, the balconies are not able to be used by the residents because the concrete is loose. And at the same time, there are issues regarding management. With all due respect, I know all the tenants, and I know all the managers, and I know the board. And the board is older. The board needs to have new blood. The board needs to have new bylaws, and that would perhaps be up to the Attorney General. This is a package of challenge, and the report makes it so clear. So I'm here to say thank you to the Comptroller. Clinton Towers is good, another good piece, because it continues to be affordable housing rental. We need more Mitchell-Lamas. We need more housing like this. We need Mitchell-Lama 2.0. Right. But it has to have the kind of oversight that the Comptroller's report deems is necessary. And finally, between Jackie and Katie and the entire Mitchell-Lama community, I want to thank you for keeping those wonderful 10 a.m. Zoom meetings going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comptroller DiNapoli, and your office for conducting this audit and bringing long overdue attention to conditions at Mitchell-Lama developments, including Tivoli Towers in my district. Tivoli Towers is the only Mitchell-Lama rental development in my district, and it is home to hundreds of hardworking New Yorkers who keep our city running. For years, residents have come to my office raising serious concerns about a lack of maintenance in their homes and deteriorating conditions, including chronically broken elevators, fire hazards, system-wide leaks that have yet to be repaired, and more. What the Comptroller's audit shows is that these tenants have been right to raise the alarm. At Tivoli Towers, auditors documented damaged facade concrete with exposed steel beams after a section of the facade fell in 2021, leaving parts of the building wrapped in protective netting. Because of these unsafe conditions, tenants have lost access to shared spaces, including the courtyard, playground, and community center, and that's for the last 5 years. Auditors also found multiple fire doors that failed to close or latch properly, broken glass in fire doors, and leaks in critical areas like the boiler room and elevator control room. In apartments, they've observed issues such as possible mold, water damage, plumbing leaks, and other hazardous conditions in a number of the units they visited. These are not cosmetic issues. These are conditions that put residents' health and safety at risk every day. The audit also raises serious concerns about financial oversight. Across the developments reviewed, auditors identified over $163,000 in questionable or unsupported spending, including bonuses, holiday events, and expenses without documentation. And more than $80,000 of that were in transactions at Tivoli Towers. At the same time, buildings were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in rental income because units sat vacant for extended periods. Management companies have a responsibility to maintain buildings in safe conditions and to use funds appropriately. This audit makes clear that we need stronger oversight to ensure residents are living in safe, well-maintained homes. And today I'm calling on the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development to act swiftly to address the issues identified and ensure the managing agent fulfills its obligations to tenants. Tivoli residents have been advocating for better conditions for years, and they deserve to live in safe and dignified housing, as does everyone. Today's audit validates their concerns, and now the focus must be on accountability and real improvements for the people who call Tivoli and other Mitchell-Lama developments home. Thank you so much, and thank you again to the Comptroller.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli for bringing forward this important report and for continuing to shine a light on the conditions facing residents across our Mitchell-Lama developments. I have always been a strong advocate for transparency in government because when audits and reports like this bring data together, they help us get right to the crux of the problem. They pull into focus the realities that many of our neighbors have been navigating for years and reinforce the lived experiences residents have been raising for a very long time. For decades, the Mitchell-Lama housing program has been one of New York's most important tools for ensuring that middle-income families can stay in our city. Teachers, municipal workers, seniors on fixed incomes, and working families have relied on these developments as a pathway to stable, affordable housing. This report reinforces a reality that too many Mitchell-Lama residents know all too well. When oversight of building maintenance and management fails, tenants are the ones left living with the consequences inside of their home. We're talking about buildings with persistent mold, pest infestations, and structural issues that remain unresolved for far too long. We're talking about apartments sitting vacant while families wait years on housing lists. And we're talking about financial mismanagement that diverts critical resources away from the repairs and maintenance that residents deserve. In my district in the Bronx, developments like Evergreen Gardens and the thousands of families who call that home are a clear example of why Mitchell-Lama housing remains such a vital option in our city. These developments make it possible for middle-income New Yorkers to remain in the communities where they work, they're raising their families and building their lives. But that promise only holds if these buildings are properly maintained. When conditions deteriorate or units are still vacant, it undermines one of the few housing options that still exist for New Yorkers. It's why I work to secure nearly much-needed investments for these communities. Over the past 4 years in the council, I've allocated more than $23 million in funding for Mitchell-Lama developments in my district, including $1.25 million specifically for Evergreen Gardens and their hardship, to support the repairs, improvements, and infrastructure upgrades that help keep these homes safe and livable. And it's why last year I passed and fought to override unanimously, I might add, Intro 1120B last session to mandate timelines and responses of boards and management companies on co-op applications to close the loop on repairs and vacancies to bring more dollars into our co-ops or Mitchells. But funding is not enough. We must also ensure strong oversight, clear accountability of managing agents, and real enforcement when inspections reveal unsafe conditions. Residents should never have to wait years for repairs that affect their health and safety. The recommendations outlined in this report, from stronger inspection enforcement to better financial transparency to addressing prolonged vacancies, are practical steps that can help restore confidence in the program and protect the housing of thousands of families rely on. I want to thank Comptroller DiNapoli again for elevating these issues and for reinforcing what residents have been telling us for years. Together, we must ensure that the promise of Mitchell-Lama housing, safe, stable, affordable homes, remains a reality for generations of New Yorkers who depend on it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Not in the greatest borough in the city of New York, but close to it. I'm so happy to be here because what ends up happening in a lot of these cases is that the personal experience of shareholders and tenants are chalked up as personal anecdotes. They say that what these folks see every single day is not necessarily true. It is a personal experience, and that we shouldn't be applying resources of any value to support their individual feelings and cases. What our Comptroller, Tom DiNapoli, does is he puts these feelings on paper. He says, let me see if what you are saying is true, puts forth an audit, and most of the time confirms what the people on the ground are already feeling. What they've known for decades is that there is a need to support Mitchell-Lamas in a way that makes it so that we can continue to speak to it the way we've had for the last 20 years. Everyone wants more Mitchell-Lama. Ask one elected official that doesn't name it as one of the greatest housing programs in the history of our nation. More Mitchell-Lama. But they don't see what the shareholders are going through every single day. Ridiculous increases every single year so that they can just make ends meet to be able to do basic maintenance and repairs for these buildings. Boards that need more professional development. These are tenants that wake up every day and volunteer their time to manage multi-million-dollar corporations. They need more help. And then we have agencies in HPD and at the state level that do the bare minimum of oversight and allow for them to continue to deteriorate in an effort to not have to invest long-term to the Mitchell-Lama program. But every single time the Comptroller, Tom DiNapoli, puts out an audit, it reaffirms what we are seeing and what we are feeling. And now that we have the data, that we have the information, we can go to the state, we can go to the city and say, do something about it. The information is there. It's no longer a personal anecdote. It's no longer how I feel. It is the truth. And that is what our Comptroller does every single time. So I want to say thank you to Comptroller Tom DiNapoli because, yes, because this is important. I just want to say, outside of the work that we do on housing in Mitchell-Lama. Black maternal health is a crisis in this city, and it's something that I care deeply about. And I feel like every time I do something about it, we barely hear it in the press. No one wants to move on it. It's almost like black women's lives are second fiddle, and we don't need to pay attention to it. I told this to our comptroller, and within 2 weeks, he gathered all the information he had on black maternal health and put it on paper. He put data to paper and showed the crisis of black maternal health. It's just every single time an audit is needed so that we can advocate on the ground for meaningful things, Tom DiNapoli shows up. So I just want to say thank you to our controller, thank you to everyone, and don't forget to spread love. Thank you.
Thank you, State Controller. Brad Hoylman-Siegel, Borough President of Manhattan, really honored to be here. And thank you, Controller, for this really insightful report. Although I'd call it a scorching report. I really would, because I represent 20,000 units of Mitchell-Lama in Manhattan. That's 93 buildings. And I think, Controller, I think Senator Mitchell and Assemblymember Lama would be turning in their graves if they knew what had happened to their incredibly important program. Look, if we can't get Mitchell-Lama 1.0 correct, how are we going to do Mitchell-Lama 2.0? And that's really the question on the table. And this report, which has been previewed by some of the local media in my district, West 42nd Street, I want to credit them for their examination of the Clinton Towers fiasco. And that's what it really is at this point, folks. It's a fiasco. We've seen the management there completely unable to control the financial situation, which is so worrisome. They owe $300,000 to 32 BJ's pension fund. Over $200,000 is owed to the city under the shelter rent tax. $122,000 to the Environmental Control Board. This building is underwater, and we need the state and the city to fix it, but also continue to provide the oversight that is necessary. As the controller points out, the management agencies, the management agents need to be managed, because we've seen that DHCR and HPD officials haven't developed the adequate controls to provide oversight. And let's be clear, these tenants also need technical assistance, am I right? To understand a very complicated financial situation for many of their buildings. And then just the quality of life concerns, the rat droppings, the mold, both at those buildings that were audited in my district, including York Hill and of course, Clinton Towers. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that the controller has uncovered, but now is the time for HPD and DHCR to act. It's a call to action on this spring day. Thank you, Mr. Controller.
Good morning. I should be on my way to Albany right now, but I heard that this report was being released, and yesterday I turned back. And I turned back because I represent Evergreen Gardens, the tenants of Evergreen Gardens, my constituents. I also have another Mitchell-Lama, Tower Gardens. And I was just appalled to read the very well done report done by our comptroller, Tom DiNapoli. So many New Yorkers call Mitchell-Lama home. The Mitchell-Lama program has long been a bastion of affordability for New Yorkers, including a gateway to home ownership. Mitchell-Lama should be the gem of our housing stock, and yet they have gone into severe disrepair and fiscal mismanagement over the years, as we've seen in this report today. And at Evergreen Gardens, we've seen decrepit conditions, inoperable fire doors, holes in the building foundation, molds. I saw one picture that had cardboard above a bathroom ceiling. That's no way to live in New York, and that's no way to live in a Mitchell-Lama. Also, millions of dollars are being spent without proper documentation and oversight. These are fiscal conditions and physical conditions that we're talking about. And unfortunately, these conditions persist as building charges are going up. It makes no sense. Our Mitchell-Lama residents are paying more and they're getting less. It is both unacceptable and it's untenable that tenants at Evergreen Gardens or any Mitchell-Lama have to deal with this. I thank our comptroller for this important report and the audit campaign that he is pursuing with his team, because New Yorkers deserve better. They deserve safe and affordable housing. This audit must bring swift action from our city and state officials, our agencies, to ensure safe living conditions for all New Yorkers. We must address these hazardous conditions immediately, increase the number and frequency of inspections, and double down on oversight and good governance. We must also get apartments back online. There are hundreds of apartments that are sitting vacant in an affordability crisis in our city. We cannot let the Mitchell-Lama program fail, and it has been a cornerstone of affordable housing for middle-income communities for decades, for nearly 75 years. So we must deliver on this promise of affordability and of safe living conditions for New Yorkers. Thank you to our Comptroller again for this wonderful report.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm going to keep it very brief. Everybody has said such wonderful things, and I just want to say the new term that I hear my children use is, you have given us receipts. You have given us receipts, and thank you for that. And for all you old folks, figure it out. And thank you for the team, because we know the team does the work, but we know the leader does the directing. So thank you again. We appreciate it. We have given you an award in the past because we knew that the work that you do is so important for us. And so now we're waiting for the plan to be implemented. And we're calling everyone to march on in to HPD, HCR. Let's figure out what we're supposed to do. Okay, thank you.
This past weekend, thousands of our members went to church. They got down on their knees and they prayed. They didn't pray for miracles. They prayed for better housing conditions. They prayed for better jobs. They prayed for affordable childcare. These should not be the prayers of our members. Our government, our elected officials are with them. But we need the resources and the finances to fix these miracles that shouldn't be miracles. That should be the way we live our lives. I wanted to, because it wasn't mentioned today, be a little bit hopeful about when these buildings do work. Our children get to go to school well, they get to live in healthy conditions, and we get the greatest actor of our generation, Timothée Chalamet, talking about Mitchell-Lamas. That's the type of impact Mitchell-Lamas have, that children even know where they live. They look around and go, this is so great, what is this? That's how successful Mitchell-Lamas could be. So imagine hundreds and thousands of future actors, future union labor leaders, elected officials that we can produce, if they could be focused on going on about their lives and not worried about rats, not worried about mold, not worried about these conditions. And let me say, as a child from Williamsburg who have seen Mitchell-Lama Towers as a place I wish I lived in when they're done well. These places are beautiful, historical places of our time. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take much to bring them back up to speed. And so I appreciate something the borough president mentioned a few minutes ago, that sometimes we have to yell and scream and we get dismissed as advocates who have isolated problems. I deeply appreciate the Comptroller's team, their leadership for putting together this report that just amplifies what we've been saying for decades. This exists. This is a problem, and if your auditor calls you, your accountant calls you, have a problem. When they have a press conference, you have a huge problem. And it's time for us to solve it, and we're gonna go on a budget in June, and we have a budget in April from the state and the city. This is the opportunity. These are the answers to the questions that you are seeking. Now it just needs the resources to make them happen. Thank you for your time.
Briefly, we thank mostly the Comptroller and his auditor team for coming into our homes and seeing what's there and giving us the foundation for crafting legislation and devising and modifying existing regulations so that we can improve what's going on in our homes and in our communities. Mitchell-Lama is the best example of social housing. We have existed for many, many years, and when it works well, it really succeeds and flies properly. Thanks especially from me to my elected officials, my council member Gail Brewer, my borough president Brad Hoyland Segal, my Assembly member Linda Rosenthal for their dedicated work for Mitchell-Lama and changing the laws and bringing changes and advocating for us. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who spoke so eloquently. So this report really is a blueprint, to pick on a point that Rob made. This pulls together the information that our audits have found, and it really is a validation of what we've heard from our advocates and from our tenants and our residents, what the elected officials have been trying to amplify. And sometimes when we do these individual audits, it has an impact on a particular set of units or development. But when you pull it all together, you really see the main takeaway. This is a systemic failure. You need a systemic response to ensure that there are safe living conditions, to ensure there's better financial management, to ensure that there is appropriate oversight. A lot of conversation was about the vacant apartment. So let's say an apartment is vacant and there is some physical deterioration that needs to be addressed. What we all learn as we go through life, you put off maintenance, you defer maintenance, it costs a whole lot more later on. So it really just becomes this vicious cycle of costs increasing, too often passed on to the tenants and the shareholders, and too often apartments that are just left vacant at a time that everybody's talking about the need for more affordable housing. So when they developed Mitchell-Lama back in the 50s, and as I think Brad mentioned it, there really were two people, last name Mitchell and one name Lama. That's where it comes from. Some people say, what is a Mitchell-Lama? It's not an animal. It's a senator or an assembly member who sponsored this legislation. And certainly what this report suggests is that we can fulfill the promise that continues to be there, and let's keep it positive. We have seen some response in a favorable way to our recommendations in the past. What we really hope this report will do is ensure more systematic change, greater oversight, and especially now that in Albany and soon here in the city, budgets will be considered, also a roadmap to suggest more financial support for the Mitchell-Lama program and for those buildings that really need it.